Okay, so following on from Phil, I'm going to talk briefly about, say a few things about the SNP, of course, is now the third largest party in the House of Commons, and Labour, who basically had opposite electoral fortunes. The SNP had a great election. They swept the board in Scotland, so they won 56 out of 59 seats. Scotland is now, in 2015, as we can see here, a sea of yellow, right? So to put these results in context, not only is this a huge swing from 2010, which you can see on the left there, but the only time previous to this election in which the SNP had ever reached double figures in terms of representation at Westminster was in October 1974, when they had 11 seats. So this is, and it cannot be understated, a huge result for the SNP. Labour, in contrast, has been annihilated in Scotland. It went from 41 seats to 1, which is that little red dot, that's Edinburgh South, which was held by Ian Murray. So in some corners, the kind of read of these results has been that the SNP lost Labour the election, not only in terms of seats, but again, I think as Phil hinted, the kind of overall electoral message, where David Cameron quite successfully, especially towards the end of the election, was able to use this kind of prospect of a Labour-SNP pact to appeal to voters to vote Conservative. But Labour lost in England also, okay? Even if it hadn't collapsed in Scotland, it wouldn't have had the numbers to stop the Conservatives from taking power. So in terms of what's next for Labour, I think there's a lot of thinking to do, but what we are seeing so far in terms of the kind of early days of the Labour leadership contest, thinking of all the declarations we've seen just over the past kind of 48 hours, is a resurgence of the kind of Blairite wing of the party who are calling for a return to the centre. Basically an argument, as Tristram Hunt put it, that the party lost the election by failing to appeal to aspirational voters who shop at John Lewis and Waitrose. And certainly the party does need to win those kind of marginal seats in Middle England, but this kind of rhetoric within the party is to some extent an oversimplification of the challenges that remain. The party also needs to appeal to the left, where it is being outflanked by the Greens and the SNP. And I would argue that the SNP swept the board in Scotland not because of political nationalism, but because the SNP successfully positioned themselves as the kind of true voice of left-wing anti-austerity Scottish politics. And Labour also needs to appeal to these kind of white working class voters who went over to UKIP. So the problem for whoever the new leader ends up being is that appeals to any one of these groups can end up marginalising or alienating the others. So there's no easy solution to these tensions within the party. The second interesting dynamic of the election that I want to flag up is around women and women's representation. Okay? And here again, the SNP are part of this story. The run-up to the 2015 general election was dominated by coverage of dangerous women, right, who were kind of shaking up the status quo of British politics, the chief of which was Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, according to the Daily Mail, the most dangerous woman in Britain, but also Nicola Sturgeon is part of a kind of red sisterhood along with Natalie Bennett and Leanne Wood, all right? So in the end, what we saw is that there are a record high of women elected to the House of Commons, 191 women, that's around 29%, so an increase from 22% in 2010, quite a big jump. 5 of Britain's main political parties are now led by women, if we include interim party leaders, including Harriet Harman in Labour, Sal Brinton and the Lib Dems for a minute, Suzanne Evans in UKIP until, again, on the third day, Nigel Farage rose again. But all 3 of the largest parties in the House of Commons, the Conservatives, Labour, and the Lib Dems, have seen increases in terms of both the number and the proportion of women in their parliamentary parties. Okay? Labour continues to lead the way with 99 women MPs. So women are over 40% of Labour's parliamentary party. These high figures show, most of all, that gender quotas work. Okay, they are the direct result of the party's use of all-women shortlists in key retirement and target seats. Okay? The Conservatives, meanwhile, will see more female MPs on the benches. They've risen from 49 to 68, but that's only 21% of the parliamentary party. Okay? And they were much less likely to run women in winnable seats. Women, also interestingly, are 20 of the 56 strong SNP parliamentary group. That's, again, a huge increase from 2010. The party had only 1 woman MP in 2010. And the SNP selected 21 women candidates, 20 of those were elected. So again, this is the result of the SNP surge. And of course, there are no Liberal Democrat women remaining. There are almost no Liberal Democrats. But none of those are women. There are 8 white men in the Liberal Democrats. So I'll just wrap up by saying, do the 2015 elections represent a kind of breakthrough for women in British politics? Again, when the Parliament does reconvene, it will look significantly different. There will be substantially more women on the benches. There's also a record number of black and minority ethnic MPs elected, so around 6%, a rise from 4%. 7 of the cabinet members so far are women, which is around a third of the cabinet, though men, of course, continue to occupy the overwhelming majority of the most senior cabinet roles. But I would suggest that despite these kind of gains, there's little room for complacency here. There's still a significant distance to travel before we see equal representation at Westminster. There are still significant disparities between the parties. Labour continues to prop up the numbers, but further progress is unlikely without greater commitment from all of the parties and without the use of strong equality measures, including gender quotas. So I'll end there.